The victory at Krell 4 was just the beginning, and everyone in Task Force Ragnarok knew it. The Krath Dominion controlled hundreds of worlds, commanded thousands of ships, and had enslaved millions of beings. One battle, no matter how decisive, would not end this war. What followed was a grinding campaign that tested human endurance in ways even they had not anticipated. 6 weeks after Krell 4, the TCS Horizon's Edge limped into orbit around a liberated world called Theros 9. The ship that had started this entire war looked nothing like the pristine vessel that had answered the Vallani distress call. Its hull was scarred with battle damage. Sections had been patched with mismatched armor plating from 3 different ships. One of its main engines was held together with what Chief Engineer Quan Soman freely admitted was hope, prayers, and really good welding. But it still flew. That was the important part. Commodore Kang Minho walked through his ship's corridors and saw the exhaustion on every face. His crew had fought in 17 engagements over 6 weeks. They had liberated 4 slave worlds. They had rescued over 50,000 prisoners. And they had done it while constantly outgunned and outnumbered. "Sir?" Lieutenant Yoon Ji-won approached him in the corridor. She looked thin, worn down by weeks of combat operations and minimal sleep. "We just received orders from Fleet Command. 3 Krath supply convoys have been spotted in the Outer Rim sectors. Admiral Han wants us to intercept." Minho felt his own exhaustion like a weight on his shoulders. "Tell the Admiral we'll need 48 hours for essential repairs first. We can't jump to hyperspace with our engines in this condition." "I already told her that, sir. She said take 72 hours. Rest your crew. We're rotating units off the front line for maintenance and resupply. Small mercies." Minho nodded his thanks and continued his inspection. In the medical bay, Dr. Lee Haisu was treating wounded from their last engagement. The bay was overcrowded, not just with human casualties, but with liberated slaves who needed medical attention. Lee looked up as Minho entered. Her face was drawn, dark circles under her eyes. "Commodore, come to check on the wounded?" "How are they?" "The humans will be fine. We're built tough. The others..." She gestured to the beings on the medical beds. "Many have been slaves for years. Malnutrition, untreated injuries, disease. I'm doing what I can, but I'm one doctor with limited supplies. I need more staff and more equipment. I'll request them in my next report to Fleet Command. They'll say the same thing they always say. Resources are stretched thin across the entire front." I know. Lee rubbed her eyes tiredly. "Sorry, I'm not angry at you. I'm just tired of watching people suffer because monsters decided they had the right to enslave them." Minho understood. They were all feeling the strain. This kind of war was different from anything humans had fought before. It wasn't about territory or resources. It was about protecting beings who couldn't protect themselves. That moral weight made every casualty, every delayed rescue, every limitation of resources feel personal. Across human space, the same exhaustion was setting in. Task Force Ragnarok had split into smaller groups to cover more territory. Every ship was operating beyond its normal capacity. Every crew was pushed to their limits. On the Indomitable, Captain Cha Yunji studied reports of Krath fleet movements and felt frustration building. For every world they liberated, intelligence indicated 3 more under attack. The Krath were adapting to human tactics, concentrating their forces and avoiding direct confrontation unless they had overwhelming advantages. "They're learning," her tactical officer observed. "After Krell 4, they know we're dangerous. Now they're being careful, which means this war is going to drag on," Yunji said. "We can't be everywhere at once. And they know it. The freed species were helping where they could. The Vallani, despite their pacifist nature, volunteered their ships as hospital vessels and supply transports. Other species provided intelligence, resources, and support. But none of them could fight like humans did. Their cultures simply didn't have the framework for total war." Lieutenant Colonel Go Minwoo led a team of special operations soldiers on missions deep behind enemy lines. They sabotaged Krath supply depots, freed small groups of prisoners, and gathered intelligence on enemy movements. It was dangerous work and losses were heavy. After one mission that cost him 3 soldiers, Minwoo sat alone in his quarters and wondered if they could really win this war. Not just win battles, but actually defeat an enemy that controlled so much territory and had so many resources. Then he remembered why they were fighting. He remembered the faces of the slaves they had freed. He remembered children separated from their parents, families torn apart, entire civilizations ground under the Krath's heel. He remembered that humans had answered a distress call because it was the right thing to do, and he got up and started planning the next mission. In the Krath Dominion, Overlord Kranzul was learning to fear. The initial reports of human capabilities had seemed exaggerated. Now, after months of losses, he understood the truth. These Deathworlders were everything the reports claimed and more. They didn't fight like other species. They didn't surrender when damaged. They didn't retreat when outnumbered. They adapted to every tactic the Krath used. Worst of all, they inspired the slaves. Worlds that had been pacified for years were now experiencing rebellions. Slaves who had accepted their fate were now fighting back, believing that help was coming. "We need to crush them," Kranzul told his war council. "Concentrate our fleets, find their home world and destroy it." But finding Earth proved difficult. Human space was vast, and the humans had excellent operational security. Every time Krath scouts entered human territory, they were detected and driven off. The few that weren't captured were hunted down by human patrols. 5 months into the war, Task Force Ragnarok had liberated 23 worlds and destroyed over 400 Krath ships. But the cost was mounting. The human fleet was down to 97 operational vessels. Casualties exceeded 30,000. Supply lines were stretched to breaking point. Fleet Admiral Han Sora called a conference of all senior commanders. They met via hologram, their faces showing the strain of months of continuous operations. "We're winning," Han Sora said bluntly, "but it's not enough. At our current rate, it will take years to liberate all the Krath-controlled systems. We'll bleed ourselves dry before we finish." "What's the alternative?" asked Captain Chayunji. "We go for the head. Intelligence has located Krathnar Prime, the Dominion capital. It's where Overlord Kranzul rules from. It's also where they operate their central slave processing facilities. Millions of prisoners pass through that world every year." Commodore Minho studied the tactical data on Krathnar Prime. It was heavily defended, over 400 warships in permanent orbit, plus massive planetary defenses. "Admiral, that's a fortress world. Taking it will cost us dearly, I know, but if we destroy their capital, we cut the head off the snake. The Dominion will collapse without central leadership. Local commanders will fight among themselves. It gives the freed worlds a chance to organize their own defenses." "It's a suicide mission," someone said. "No," Han Sora corrected. "It's a high-risk operation with acceptable losses for strategic gain." "There's a difference." The silence that followed was heavy. Everyone knew what she was really saying. Many of them would die in this attack. Maybe most of them, but it might end the war. "I'm not ordering anyone to go," Han Sora continued. "This is voluntary. Any ship that wants to withdraw can do so without any judgment. You've all done more than anyone could ask, but I'm going, and I'm going to free every slave on that world or die trying." Not a single commander withdrew. They were tired, battered, and operating with damaged ships and exhausted crews. But they were human, and humans didn't quit just because something was hard. Preparations began immediately. Ships underwent rapid repairs using whatever materials were available. Ammunition stores were topped off. Medical supplies were stocked. Soldiers wrote letters home just in case. Priestess Thelerin, the Villani who had been freed from Krell 4, walked among the human ships as they prepared. She was documenting everything for her chronicle. She watched Marines checking their weapons, pilots reviewing their attack plans, doctors preparing for mass casualties. What struck her most was their calmness. These beings knew they were sailing into a battle that might kill them all. Yet they showed no fear. Or perhaps they did feel fear, but chose to move forward anyway. She had spent months with humans now and was beginning to understand them. They came from a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years. They had learned to face death with stubborn determination. They had learned that the proper response to danger wasn't surrender. It was defiance. On the horizon's edge, Quan Soman worked miracles in the engine room. Her ship had been through so much that by rights it should have been scrapped for parts. But she refused to let it die. She patched systems that had no business working. She rerouted power through systems that were never designed to handle it. She held her ship together through sheer force of will. "Chief?" one of her engineers asked. "Do you really think this ship can make it through another major battle?" Soman wiped grease from her hands and looked at the massive engines she had been nursing for months. Task Force Ragnarok emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Krell 4 system, and what they saw confirmed every worst fear about the Krath Dominion. The planet below was a fortress. Massive orbital stations ringed it like a crown of thorns, each one bristling with weapons. 317 Krath warships patrolled the space around the world, organized into defensive formations that spoke of military discipline and experience. And on the surface, visible even from orbit, were the slave processing centers. Huge complexes where beings from dozens of species were sorted, broken, and prepared for lives of servitude. On the bridge of the Resolute, Fleet Admiral Han Sora studied the tactical displays with cold calculation. 300 ships versus 147. Not great odds, but she had faced worse during the colony wars. Beside her, Commodore Kang Minho highlighted key targets on the holographic display. The orbital stations are their command and control hubs. Minho explained. Take those out, and their fleet coordination falls apart. But they're heavily defended. We'll need to punch through the outer screen first. Recommendations? Han Sora asked. Hit them from multiple vectors. Force them to split their attention. Use our fighters to exploit gaps in their point defense. And keep moving. Don't let them pin us down with concentrated fire. Han Sora nodded. She opened a channel to the entire task force. All ships, this is Admiral Han. In approximately 10 minutes, we're going to announce humanity's arrival to the Krath Dominion. I want them to remember this day. I want them to know that attacking peaceful species has consequences. More importantly, I want every slave down on that planet to know that help has arrived. Let's make this loud. She switched to a different channel, one broadcasting on all Krath military frequencies. Attention Krath Dominion forces. This is Fleet Admiral Han Sora of the Terran Coalition. You have violated the sovereignty of multiple peaceful species. You have murdered civilians. You have taken sentient beings as slaves. These actions are unacceptable. You have one opportunity to surrender. Release all prisoners immediately and withdraw your forces. You have 5 minutes to comply. The response came quickly. A Krath commander appeared on screen, his reptilian features twisted in what might have been amusement. I am Sub-Overlord Vrentok. You are the humans. The Deathworlders. We have heard of your kind. Savage creatures from a hostile world who think themselves mighty. You face the full power of the Krath Dominion. Surrender now, and perhaps we will allow you to live as slaves rather than corpses. Han Sora's expression didn't change. I'll take that as a refusal. Your funeral. She cut the transmission and turned to her tactical officer. Execute attack pattern Alpha 7. All ships weapons free. The human fleet split into 3 groups and accelerated toward Krell 4 from different angles. The Krath ships moved to intercept, confident in their numerical superiority. They had crushed dozens of species with these same tactics. Overwhelming numbers, devastating firepower, and the psychological impact of watching your forces shattered before the might of the Dominion. But the humans didn't shatter. The first salvo came from the human battleships. Railguns fired, sending tungsten slugs screaming through space at relativistic speeds. The Krath shields absorbed some of the impacts, but not all. Where the slugs hit home, they punched straight through hulls and detonated inside ships, tearing them apart from within. Missile launch, called out the tactical officer. All tubes firing. Thousands of missiles erupted from the human fleet like a swarm of angry hornets. The Krath point defenses opened fire, destroying many of them. But there were too many coming from too many directions. Explosions blossomed across the Krath formation as missiles found their targets. Major Shin Yuna led her fighter squadron into the chaos. All wings, follow my lead. We're going for the orbital stations. Stay tight and watch your 6. Her fighter, callsign Reaper 1, dove toward the nearest station at full burn. Behind her, 300 human fighters followed in perfect formation. The Krath launched their own fighters to intercept, sleek craft with powerful weapons but limited maneuverability. The dogfight that erupted was brutal and one-sided. Krath pilots flew with skill, but they had evolved on a low-gravity world. Their bodies couldn't handle the extreme G-forces that humans endured routinely. Yuna threw her fighter into a tight spiral that would have rendered most aliens unconscious. She came around behind a Krath fighter and fired. The enemy craft exploded. This is Reaper 1, she broadcast to her squadron. They can't match our maneuvers. Use your speed and agility. Make them chase you, then outfly them. It worked. Human fighters danced through space, performing maneuvers that seemed impossible. They pulled turns that should have killed their pilots. They accelerated and decelerated with G-forces that would have liquefied most alien species. But humans had evolved in Earth's crushing gravity, hunting prey across vast distances. Their bodies were built for this. The Krath fighters fell like leaves in a storm. Meanwhile, Captain Cha Yunji's dreadnought Indomitable pushed through the Krath formation like a battering ram. Energy beams hammered against its shields. Missiles detonated against its hull. Warnings blared across the bridge as systems strained under the assault. "Hull integrity at 70%, reported the damage control officer. "Keep going," Yunji ordered calmly. "All power to forward shields. Main guns, target that battleship dead ahead." The Indomitable's primary weapons, massive railguns the size of buildings, fired. The Krath battleship's shields held for exactly 3 seconds. Then they failed, and the tungsten slugs tore through the ship from bow to stern. It broke apart in a cascade of secondary explosions. "They're not used to enemies who can take punishment," Yunji observed. "Their whole strategy depends on overwhelming force against weak opposition." But we're not weak. The human ships were taking damage. There was no avoiding it against these numbers. But they were built to survive. Redundant systems kicked in when primaries failed. Damage control teams sealed breaches with practiced efficiency. Ships that would have been considered lost causes by other species kept fighting. It was the Krath who began to waver first. Sub-Overlord Vrentak watched his fleet being torn apart with growing horror. The humans weren't fighting like any species he had encountered before. They didn't retreat when damaged. They didn't break formation when hit. They just kept coming, methodical and relentless. Like some kind of natural disaster. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human flagship," he ordered desperately. 30 Krath ships turned their weapons on the Resolute. The barrage was devastating. The human flagship's shields failed completely. Energy beams scored its hull. Explosions rippled across its surface. On the Resolute's bridge, alerts screamed. "Shields down. Multiple hull breaches. We've lost power on decks 7 through 12. Damage control teams, get those fires out," Han Sora ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Helm, keep us in formation. Weapons, return fire." The Resolute shuddered as it fired back. Despite the damage, despite the fact that it was visibly breaking apart, it kept fighting. Its railguns spoke. Its missiles launched. It became a symbol of human determination. Battered but unbowed. Seeing their flagship refuse to die despite overwhelming damage broke something in the Krath fleet's morale. These humans should be dead. Their ships should be destroyed. But they just kept fighting. Minho's tactical genius showed as he coordinated the 3 human attack groups. While the Krath focused on the Resolute, his forces hit them from the flanks. Ships that had pulled out of position to attack the flagship found themselves exposed to devastating crossfire. General Nam Taijun's marine transports used the chaos to reach the planet's surface. 50,000 Marines in powered armor dropped into the slave processing centers like the wrath of an angry god. The Krath ground forces had never faced anything like them. Human Marines were terrifying in close combat. They moved fast, hit hard, and fought with a ferocity born from millions of years of being both predator and prey. The Krath guards, used to terrorizing helpless slaves, found themselves facing soldiers who had trained for combat since childhood. "Clear the compound," roared Sergeant Bei Jinho as his team breached the main detention center. "Free the prisoners!" "Move, move, move!" Krath soldiers tried to mount a defense. It lasted exactly 40 seconds. Human combat tactics had been refined through thousands of years of warfare. They used cover, coordinated their fire, and advanced with mechanical precision. The Krath, despite their technology, fought like amateurs. The slaves watched in amazement as the humans systematically dismantled their captors. Many had been prisoners for years, had lost all hope of rescue. Now these strange beings from a distant world were tearing through locked doors and cutting chains. Above, the space battle reached its climax. The human fleet had lost 19 ships with dozens more damaged, but the Krath had lost over 100 vessels. More importantly, their formation had collapsed. Ships fled in disorder as the reality sank in. They were losing. "All Krath ships, this is Sub-Overlord Vrentak," came the transmission. "We surrender. Cease fire. We surrender." Han Sora watched the Krath ships power down their weapons. "All human vessels cease fire, but maintain targeting locks. If they so much as twitch wrong, destroy them." She opened a channel to the surface. "General Nam, status report." Then space twisted, and they were gone into hyperspace, leaving the alien blockade. The footage from Villani Prime played on screens across human space. Every news network, every public display, every personal device showed the same horrifying images. Cities burning, Peaceful civilians gunned down in the streets, the Villani packed into cages like animals, and through it all, the cold efficiency of the Krath Dominion as they systematically destroyed a civilization that had never raised a weapon against anyone. On Earth, in the capital city of New Geneva, the response was immediate and furious. Fleet Admiral Hans Sora stood before the Emergency Defense Council, her uniform crisp and her expression hard as steel. Behind her, a holographic display showed the extent of the Krath invasion. 43 systems marked in red, millions of beings enslaved or dead. The situation is clear, Hans Sora said. Her voice carried the weight of someone who had spent 30 years in the military and had never lost her ability to be shocked by cruelty. The Krath Dominion has been conducting a campaign of conquest for at least 5 years. They move into a system, overwhelm any defenses, and enslave the population. They've targeted peaceful species exclusively because these species don't fight back effectively. One of the council members, a politician named Representative Yang Minjae, raised his hand. Admiral, the Villani are 12 light years from our nearest colony. Is this really our fight? The room went silent. Every military officer present turned to stare at Yang with expressions ranging from disbelief to barely controlled anger. Hans Sora's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. Representative Yang, I'm going to pretend you didn't ask that question, because the alternative is to believe you're seriously suggesting we should sit back and watch genocide happen just because it's not happening to us yet. Yang shifted uncomfortably. I'm simply asking about the strategic implications. The strategic implications are simple, Hans Sora interrupted. The Krath have conquered 43 systems in 5 years. That's an average of nearly 9 systems per year. They're expanding rapidly and showing no signs of stopping. Eventually, they'll reach human space. When they do, would you rather face them when they control 100 systems? Or would you prefer to stop them now, while we have the advantage of choosing the battlefield? Another council member, Ambassador Kim Junho, spoke up. He was humanity's primary liaison to the galactic community. Admiral, I've been in contact with the other major civilizations. They're aware of the Krath threat, but most are unwilling to commit military forces. Why not? Hans Sora demanded. Because they're afraid, Kim said bluntly. Most spacefaring species evolved on worlds with abundant resources and mild conditions. Their cultures developed around cooperation and trade. The concept of total war is alien to them. They don't have the military traditions or the cultural framework to fight like the Krath do, and certainly not like we do. Hans Sora understood immediately. Humanity had evolved on Earth, a planet that had tried to kill them in every possible way. Ice ages, plagues, predators, natural disasters, humans had survived them all. They had learned to fight, to adapt, to endure. War was part of their history, woven into their DNA. Most aliens couldn't comprehend that kind of existence. They saw humans as strange and frightening, coming from a world so hostile it shouldn't have produced intelligent life at all. They called Earth a death world, and its inhabitants Deathworlders. Maybe it was time to show the galaxy what Deathworlders could do when someone threatened the innocent. Counselors, Hans Sora said, I'm requesting authorization to mobilize Task Force Ragnarok. We'll assemble every available military vessel and take the fight to the Krath. We'll show them what happens when they mess with species under human protection. The Villani aren't under human protection, Yang protested weakly. They are now, Hans Sora said flatly. The vote was unanimous except for Yang's abstention. Within hours, the orders went out across human space. Every military vessel was recalled. Merchant ships were commissioned as supply transports. Factories shifted to wartime production. Humanity, still young in the galactic community, was going to war. Captain Kang Minho, recently promoted to Commodore for his actions at Villani Prime, stood on the observation deck of the massive shipyard orbiting Mars. Below him, stretching for hundreds of kilometers in every direction, warships gathered. Destroyers, cruisers, battleships, and carriers. Humanity's military might assembling in one place for the first time since the Colony Wars. Captain Cha Yunji approached from behind. She commanded the TCS Indomitable, a dreadnought so large it had its own gravitational field. Impressive, isn't it, she said. 147 ships. Nearly 2 million tons of steel and determination. It's not enough, Minho said quietly. The Krath control hundreds of worlds. They have thousands of ships. But they've never fought humans before. Yunji smiled. It was a sharp smile, full of confidence. They don't know what we're capable of. That's our advantage. On the Indomitable's bridge, Commander Choi Min-seo worked with tactical officers from across the fleet. They studied every piece of intelligence about the Krath, looking for weaknesses. The analysis from the Horizon's Edge's encounter had been invaluable. They knew the Krath relied on heavy shields and energy weapons. They knew Krath ships were fast but fragile. They knew Krath tactics favored overwhelming force against unprepared enemies. They fight like bullies, Choi explained to the assembled officers. They hit hard and fast, expecting their enemies to fold immediately. When they face resistance, they don't adapt well. They just hit harder. So we need to hit harder than they do, one of the other officers said. Not just harder, smarter. We need to make them fight our way, not theirs. Meanwhile, in the diplomatic quarters of the shipyard, Ambassador Kim Jun-ho met with representatives from several alien species. Most were refugees from Krath-conquered worlds. They had come seeking sanctuary in human space, and what they found was a civilization preparing for war. One of them, an insectoid creature named Clickspeaker from the Threen Collective, watched the warships through a viewport. Your species builds impressive vessels, but you are so few. The Krath are many. Numbers aren't everything, Kim said. Sometimes it's about determination, about refusing to accept the unacceptable. My people tried to fight, Clickspeaker said, their translated voice full of sadness. We built ships. We trained soldiers. The Krath destroyed our fleets in days. They are too strong. They're strong because they've only fought species who don't know how to fight total war. Humans learned that skill the hard way over thousands of years. We're really, really good at it. Clickspeaker turned to look at Kim with their multifaceted eyes. You speak of war as if it is a skill like art or mathematics. For humans, it is. We spent most of our history fighting each other. We learned every possible way to win, to survive, to prevail against impossible odds. Then we decided to stop fighting each other and work together. Now we use those skills to protect others. I hope you are right, Clickspeaker said, because if you fail, humanity will be the next species the Krath enslave. Then we won't fail, Kim said simply. In the medical facilities, Dr. Lee Hyasu trained teams of medics and doctors from multiple species. The Villani refugee Thelevin worked alongside her, sharing knowledge of Villani biology and helping coordinate treatment protocols for the various species they might encounter. The Krath take prisoners for slave labor, Thelevin explained. They keep them alive but provide minimal care. Many die from injuries, disease, or malnutrition. The survivors become living tools working until they break. Lee's expression hardened. She had seen the freed prisoners from Villani Prime, seen their injuries and trauma. Then we'll need to be ready for mass casualty events. Malnutrition, untreated wounds, psychological trauma, it's going to be ugly. You seem very calm about this, Thelevin observed. I'm not calm. I'm focused. There's a difference. Calm means you don't care. Focus means you care too much to let emotions get in the way. Lee checked her supply lists again. We'll save as many as we can. That's all any doctor can do. 3 weeks later, Task Force Ragnarok was ready. 147 warships, carrying 300,000 military personnel and enough firepower to crack a planet. Fleet Admiral Han Sora stood on the bridge of her flagship, the TCS Resolute, and looked at the faces on her command screen. Commodore Kang Minho, Captain Cha Eunji, General Nam Tae-jun of the Marine Corps, Major Shin Yuna leading the fighter squadrons. All of them ready, all of them determined. We're about to do something unprecedented, Han Sora said. We're going to war against an enemy that outnumbers us. An enemy that has conquered dozens of civilizations. An enemy that thinks strength is everything and mercy is weakness. They're about to learn that humans understand strength better than they could imagine. And they're about to learn that mercy isn't weakness, it's a choice that the strong make. We're going to free every slave they've taken. We're going to destroy their ability to wage war. And we're going to show the galaxy that evil doesn't win just because it's powerful. Any questions? Silence. Everyone knew their mission. Everyone knew what was at stake. Intelligence has identified the Krath staging world. Krell 4. It's a fortress planet in the Outer Veil, 6 days' travel from here. That's where they process slaves and see. The Horizon's Edge dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Villani Prime system. And what Captain Kang Minho saw made his stomach turn to ice. 12 massive warships hung in orbit around the beautiful blue-green world below. They were unlike any vessels Minho had seen before. Their hulls were smooth and organic-looking, covered in strange ridges and patterns that seemed to shift in the light. Each ship was easily twice the size of the horizon's edge. They formed a blockade around the planet, their weapons pointed down at the surface. Even from this distance, Minho could see the fires burning on Volani Prime. Entire continents glowed with the orange light of destruction. As he watched, one of the alien ships fired a beam of purple energy at the planet. The beam struck somewhere in the northern hemisphere, and moments later, a new bloom of fire appeared. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Yoon Ji-won. "They're glassing the cities." Commander Choi Min-seo was already at his tactical station, his hands flying across the controls. "Captain, I'm reading multiple life signs on the surface, but they're decreasing rapidly. Those ships are systematically destroying population centers. I'm also detecting smaller craft moving between the surface and the larger vessels. They appear to be transport ships. They're taking prisoners," Minho said. His voice was flat and cold. Just like the distress call said. Dr. Lee Hisu appeared on the bridge again. She had changed into her combat medical uniform, the one with reinforced plating and emergency medical supplies built into every pocket. "Captain, we need to get people off that planet now." "Agreed. But first we need to understand what we're up against." Minho turned to Choi. "Tactical analysis. Can we fight those ships?" Choi studied his displays, his expression grim. "Their vessels are large, but their design doesn't match any known military architecture. Look at this." He brought up a detailed scan of the nearest alien ship. "They have powerful energy shields, but their hull plating is relatively thin. They've built these ships to overpower enemies with sheer firepower while hiding behind shields. They're not designed to take hits." "Because they've never needed to," Minho realized. "They've been attacking species that don't fight back. They've never faced anyone who could hurt them." "Exactly, sir. And there's something else. I'm detecting minimal point defense systems. They're vulnerable to fast-moving targets." Minho leaned forward in his chair, studying the enemy formation. His mind raced through tactics and possibilities. The smart move would be to observe and report back to Fleet Command. That's what his orders said to do. But by the time reinforcements arrived, Volani Prime would be nothing but ash and empty cities. He thought about the colony wars, when human settlements on distant worlds had faced attacks from hostile forces. He remembered the stories from his grandfather, who had fought at New Shanghai. "Help isn't coming fast enough," his grandfather had said. "So we made our own help. That's what humans do." "Sergeant Bay," Minho spoke into the ship's communication system. "Report to the bridge with your Marine contingent. Full combat gear." Sergeant Bei Jinho arrived 3 minutes later with 20 Marines in powered armor. They were a hard-looking group, men and women who had trained for combat in every environment imaginable. Bei himself was a veteran of a dozen boarding actions. He saluted crisply. "Marines ready, sir. Sergeant, we're going to punch through that blockade and get to the surface. Your team will secure a landing zone and extract as many Volani as you can carry. We'll have maybe 10 minutes before those enemy ships converge on us." Bei grinned. It was not a pleasant expression. "Sir, we can work with 10 minutes. Commander Choi, plot us a trajectory straight through their formation. Full combat speed. Load all missile tubes and charge the main guns." "Sir?" Ji-won spoke up, her voice uncertain. "That's 12 capital ships. We're one cruiser." "True, but we're a human cruiser, and they don't know what that means yet." Minho strapped himself into his command chair. "All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. We are engaging hostile forces in defense of Volani Prime. Make your shots count." The horizon's edge turned and accelerated toward the alien blockade. Alarms wailed throughout the ship as combat systems came online. In the engine room, Kwon So-min pushed the reactors to full power, giving the ship every bit of speed she could coax from the massive drives. The alien ships noticed them coming. 2 of the nearest vessels broke formation and moved to intercept. Their weapons began charging, purple energy crackling along their hulls. "Incoming fire," Choi announced. "Multiple energy beams. Impact in 5 seconds. Brace for impact." Minho gripped his chair's armrests. The enemy beams struck the horizon's edge like hammers. The ship's shields flared brilliant blue as they absorbed the energy. Warning lights lit up across the bridge as power systems struggled to compensate. But the shields held. They had been designed by humans, built to withstand punishment that would tear apart most alien vessels. "Shields at 70%, Choi reported. "Hull integrity holding. Return fire. All weapons." The horizon's edge answered with violence. Missiles streaked from their tubes, dozens of them. spreading out in a pattern designed to overwhelm point defenses. Behind them came the ship's main railguns, firing solid slugs of tungsten at a significant fraction of light speed. The alien ship's shields stopped some of the missiles, but not all of them, and the railgun slugs, lacking energy signatures that shields were designed to deflect, punched straight through. The kinetic impact shattered hull plating and tore through internal compartments. One of the alien ships lost power and began to drift. The second ship tried to turn away, but the horizon's edge was already past it, accelerating deeper into the blockade. They're not used to enemies that can take a punch and keep fighting, Minho observed. Their tactics are built for quick, overwhelming force. Hit them hard and they fold. 3 more alien ships converged on them. Energy beams crisscrossed space, turning the void into a light show of destruction. The horizon's edge twisted and turned, its human pilot trusting his instincts and reflexes honed from millions of years of predator evolution. The enemy fire was powerful but predictable, designed to hit slower-moving targets. The human ship was anything but slow. It dove and weaved like a fighter. Impossible for a vessel its size, pulling maneuvers that would have knocked most aliens unconscious from the G-forces. Inside, the crew gritted their teeth against the pressure but stayed at their posts. Launching assault shuttle, Bay reported from the hangar deck. We're going in. The small shuttle dropped from the horizon's edge's belly and streaked toward the planet below. 2 alien fighters moved to intercept it. The shuttle's pilot, a woman named Major Shin Yuna, pushed her craft into a dive that would have been suicide for anyone with slower reflexes. The alien fighters tried to follow but couldn't match her trajectory. She weaved between their fire and hit the atmosphere at an angle that made her craft scream. On the bridge, Minho watched the tactical display. 3 alien ships destroyed, 2 damaged, but the others were closing in. Joy, give me an exit vector. We need to buy time for the shuttle. Plotting now, sir, but we're going to take damage getting out. Acceptable. Engineering, prepare for emergency jump to hyperspace the moment that shuttle returns. On Villani Prime, the shuttle landed hard in what had once been a beautiful coastal city. Now it was ruins. Bay and his Marines poured out, their weapons ready. The air smelled of smoke and something worse. Bodies lay in the streets, Villani civilians who had been cut down as they fled. Spread out, Bay ordered. Find survivors. We've got 8 minutes. They found a detention camp 3 blocks from the landing zone. Alien soldiers guarded a group of several hundred Villani packed into cages. These aliens were bipedal but covered in thick scales. Their eyes were cold and reptilian. When they saw the humans approaching, they raised their weapons with confidence. They had conquered 40 worlds. What were a handful of soldiers? They learned the answer quickly. Human Marines in powered armor were terrors in close combat. They moved with speed and precision that the alien guards couldn't match. Within 90 seconds, the guards were dead and the cages were being opened. One of the Villani, an older individual with intricate patterns on their skin, approached Bay. They spoke in their musical language, but the translator in Bay's helmet converted it. You came. We called for help and you came. We heard you, Bay said simply. Now let's get you out of here. Can you walk? Yes, but there are thousands more in camps across the city. I know, but we can only save who we can carry right now. I promise you we'll be back for the others. They loaded 200 Villani onto the shuttle. It was overcrowded and far beyond its rated capacity, but the pilot made it work. The craft lifted off as enemy forces converged on their position. Above, the horizon's edge was battered but unbowed. Its shields were down to 20%. Hull breaches leaked atmosphere from 3 decks, but its weapons still fired and its engines still burned. Shuttle is clear of the atmosphere, G1 reported. They're coming home. All power to rear shields, Minho ordered. Get us out of here! The horizon's edge turned and ran, the alien ships pursuing. Energy beams chased after them, some striking home. But the human ship had already proven it could survive. It limped toward the edge of the system, its shuttle docking as they flew. The bridge of the TCS Horizon's edge hummed with the steady rhythm of deep space travel. Captain Kang Minho sat in his command chair, reviewing supply reports with the kind of practiced boredom that came from 3 weeks of uneventful patrol. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. The ship was one of humanity's newest exploration vessels, built heavy and tough like everything humans made. It had to be. Earth was not a kind world, and humans built their machines to survive anything. Lieutenant Yoon Ji-won looked up from her console, her headset crackling with static. She frowned and adjusted the frequency controls. The static grew louder, then cleared slightly. Her eyes widened as she recognized what she was hearing. "Captain, I'm picking up something on the emergency channels." Minho sat up straighter. Emergency channels were sacred across the galaxy. Every species with faster-than-light travel monitored them. "What kind of something?" "It's a distress signal, sir. Weak, but definitely there." Ji-won's fingers flew across her controls, isolating the signal from the background noise. "It's coming from the Villani territories, about 12 light-years from our position." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew about the Villani. They were a peaceful species, aquatic beings who created beautiful art and music. They had never built weapons or armies. They believed that all life was sacred and that violence was never the answer. In a galaxy where most species thought the same way, that philosophy had served them well for thousands of years. Minho stood and walked to Ji-won's station. "Can you clean it up? I need to hear what they're saying." Ji-won worked her controls again. The static fought back, but gradually a voice emerged. It spoke in the musical language of the Villani, but the universal translator built into the ship's systems converted it to human language. What they heard made the blood drain from Minho's face. "This is Villani Prime. We are under attack. Unknown vessels have breached our orbit. They are firing on civilian centers. Millions are dead. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help. They are taking our people. They are putting them in ships and taking them away. Please help us, please." The voice broke into what could only be sobbing. Then the transmission cut to static and looped back to the beginning. The message was repeating over and over, an automated cry for help broadcast into the void. "Get me Fleet Command," Minho ordered. His voice was steady, but his jaw was tight. "Priority channel." It took 3 minutes for the quantum communication system to establish a link across the vast distance to Earth. Admiral Park Dae-hyun appeared on the main screen, his weathered face serious as always. "Captain Kang, your report." Minho explained the situation quickly and efficiently. He played the distress call. Park listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each word. "The Villani have no military," Park said when the message finished. "They've never needed one. Who would attack them?" "Unknown, sir. But whoever they are, they're hitting civilian targets. This isn't a military action. It's a massacre." Park was quiet for a long moment. "Captain, your orders are to observe and report. Do not engage. I'm dispatching Task Force 7 to your location. They'll arrive in 4 days. Until then, you are to maintain position and gather intelligence. In 4 days, sir." Minho couldn't keep the frustration from his voice. "By then, there might not be any Villani left to save." "I understand your feelings, Captain. But the Horizon's Edge is one ship. You have 300 souls aboard. I won't risk them without knowing what you're facing." Park's voice softened slightly. 4 days, Kang. Hold position." The screen went dark. Minho stood silent for a moment, staring at the empty space where the Admiral's face had been. Behind him, his crew waited. They had all heard the distress call. They all knew what 4 days might mean. Dr. Lee Hisu stepped onto the bridge from the medical bay. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and steady hands. She had served in the colony wars and had seen more death than anyone her age should have. "Captain, I've been listening to the medical frequencies. There's chatter from other ships in the area. The attack on Villani Prime isn't isolated. At least 17 of their colony worlds have gone dark in the last week." 17? Minho turned to face her. "That's not a raid. That's an invasion." "Yes, sir. And there's something else. Some of the ships that went to investigate haven't reported back." The silence on the bridge grew heavier. Commander Choi Min-seo, the ship's tactical officer, spoke up from his station. "Captain, if this is a coordinated attack across multiple systems, we're looking at a major military operation. Whoever these attackers are, they have significant resources." Minho walked back to his command chair and sat down. His mind raced through the possibilities. Fleet Command was being cautious, and that made sense. Humanity had only been in space for 200 years. They were still the new species, still proving themselves to the older galactic civilizations. Starting a war with an unknown enemy could be catastrophic, but the Villani were dying. Right now, while he sat here following orders, he looked at his crew. They looked back at him with trust and determination. These were men and women from Earth, from a world that had tried to kill humanity for millions of years. They came from a planet where storms could flatten cities, where earthquakes could swallow entire regions, where diseases evolved faster than medicine could keep up. Humans had survived all of it. They had thrived. They had looked at their hostile world and said, "We refuse to die." That same stubborn refusal to accept the unacceptable lived in every person on this bridge. "Lieutenant Yoon," Minho said quietly. "Plot a course to Volani Prime, best speed." Jawan's fingers hesitated over her controls. "Sir, the Admiral ordered us to hold position." The Admiral gave those orders based on incomplete information. We now know this is a multi-system invasion. That changes things. We need current intelligence, and the only way to get it is to go there ourselves. "And if we encounter hostile forces?" Commander Choi asked. Minho smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Then we'll show them why it's a bad idea to attack peaceful neighbors while humans are watching." Engage hyperspace drive. The horizon's edge shuddered as its massive engines came to full power. Space twisted around the ship as it punched through into hyperspace. The stars stretched and blurred. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Kwon So-min monitored her systems and whispered a prayer that they would arrive in time. In the medical bay, Dr. Lee began preparing for casualties. She hoped she wouldn't need the extra supplies she was setting out. But hope and preparation were different things, and she had learned long ago to prepare for the worst. On the bridge, Captain Kang Minho watched the hyperspace display and thought about the Volani. He thought about their art and their music and their belief that all life was sacred. He thought about whoever had decided to attack them, and he thought about what humans did to bullies. The horizon's edge flew toward Volani Prime like an arrow aimed at the heart of darkness.